Yeah. There we go. Don't touch the thing. Okay. Okay, can you all hear me now? Nod if you
Yes.
can. Yes, great, thank you. So firstly, I want to say a massive thank you for rallying behind the Prime Minister. It was appreciated, and yesterday I was invited to go to a little gathering at Number 10 in the Garden, which was exciting because I've never been to the Garden at Number 10 before, where he gave a speech to some MPs that have been supportive, staff and his family. And once again, my word, did the man demonstrate the good grace that he operates under. I went wanting to punch a few walls. I'm a pacifist, I'm a lover, not a fighter, but I have felt probably as angry and as upset as you all have. I did media almost immediately after Keir resigned yesterday. And try to temper my comments, but also was just honest about the way it felt. I think as a Labour member of Parliament, the one thing I think I always feel quite passionately about is social justice, and it felt like there was a bit of an attack on this man that we all think at least was doing a fantastic job. So to have a human emotion, a human response to an outcome that none of us thought was fair or right, I think is completely and utterly normal. And I went to Number 10 all guns blazing, thinking I'm going to tell Keir one about this campaign, which I did do, and I told him about the groundswell of support here, and particularly on Threads as a social media platform that's turned into one of my new favourite places to be, because I do my own social media across all the platforms. It is exhausting, but a very good use of my time as well. So I was going to tell him about the support, but also sort of say how, annoyed I am with people, and I was joking because I want to shut some people off the cliff, and he went, you want to get that out of your system. And I kind of was like, oh yeah, do you know what, he's got a point. And when he gave his speech, he says, and again, he's just so gracious. He said, it's the end of the road for me, which, well, that was it. Loads of us started welling up and crying at that point. But it's the end of the road for me, but it's not for the Labour Party. I want to see the Labour movement successful. I will be supporting whoever becomes the next Prime Minister with a smooth transition, and I want us to be successful in making things better for the country. And I felt that really sort of like dampened the fire and fury in my belly, and so that was one thing that I wanted to make sure that I sort of hopefully pass on to you all a little bit. When Jack and I spoke yesterday, I hadn't been to Number 10 at that point, and what I did say to him was, look, if it helps, Jack, because I know all your signatories are feeling frustrated and hurt and upset, how's about we have a call, offer to set up a call. I'll come and I'll listen, because I think sometimes the most important thing to do is to be able to sort of feel that your voice is being heard in the place that you want it to be heard. So that was the first purpose of this call. And then the second really was, after I'd been to Number 10, was to sort of say to you, well, we're all clearly a bunch of pragmatic people. So full disclosure, I am late to politics in the grand scheme of things. I joined the Labour Party in my mid-30s because I hated Brexit. I hated what it was doing to the country. I hated that it was dividing a nation, it was dividing families, and I used to look at politicians with sort of disdain, and I would feel apathy and just frustration. And so when I got involved, I kind of wanted to be the change that I wanted to see, but I never intended to stand. And I still feel like a bit of an accidental member of Parliament. But the Labour Party does this clever thing of sucking you in, and when it spots somebody with a little bit of charisma and passion in their belly, it encourages you to use that. And so I will be forever grateful, because the one thing that I am able to do as a Labour member of Parliament in a Labour government is actually stand up for my constituents in South Derbyshire and effect positive change. And I think sometimes when we're feeling really angry because something hasn't gone our way, and this was significant yesterday, I have had to sort of take stock of myself and remind myself that a few months ago, I remember speaking in the chamber over the Peter Mandelson stuff. I've never met the man, and I said, I'm glad I haven't. But I never joined the party because I hold one leader in a high regard. Like I'm not some cultist. That's not me. I have voted different ways in the past. I grew up with my granddad reading the Daily Mail and then the News of the World, and that shaped how I voted to start with. And I understand that mindset as well. And I think it served me well when I'm on the doorstep and I'm speaking to people that are not your traditional Labour voters. I find it much easier because I do understand it coming from a point of view that not everybody's like a political geek. Not everybody really cares about politics, but they care about the impact that politics has. So I found that to be a real strength. And so I was thinking back to this speech I gave in the debate chamber, and I said, you know, I am not an ite of any kind, and I wasn't a Starmerite either. I ultimately decided to call the Labour Party my home because I believe in two key things, and that is the welfare state and the NHS, both of which were Labour government creations. And so I don't agree with everything the Labour Party does. It would be a bit weird if I did, because that would assume that we're all the same. And I think if anyone ever expects everything to go their way with any one party, they're a little bit deluded, because politics is a compromise, and sometimes we win and sometimes we lose, even in our own party, or in my own party. And so I think my first thing to mention was that Keir, who has been the man who's been on the receiving end of all this, and his wife, lovely wife Vic, and the two gorgeous children, they are pragmatic about it. I couldn't quite believe how lovely they were and sort of zen. That's my interpretation, but they seemed quite zen. And Keir looked like he had the weight of the world lifted off his shoulders, to be honest with you. Hopefully you saw that in the photo I posted of me and him yesterday. But it's, I know we're frustrated, but whoever becomes the next Prime Minister, and we can talk about that actually in a moment as well. This is not Carling, by the way, this is pink grapefruit squash. Whoever ends up being the next Prime Minister is still somebody who represents the good things that the Labour Party stands for. They will still want to fix the country. They're still desperate to prevent reform from getting in, and people will start to feel the benefit of the first 2 years where Keir was our Prime Minister and delivering on the things that we said we were going to deliver. The first 2 years were always going to be the hardest, because that's where you're pushing through legislation and it has to go from the Commons to the Lords, back to the Commons, and then royal assent, and so that stuff always was going to take ages. This was the year when things were going to turn around. So whoever does step into Keir's shoes is actually picking up good progress so far. We are 6 points behind Reform, if we class them as the official opposition. We're 6 points behind them, and that is normal for a midterm government. Normal for a midterm government when we are not in this kind of situation we are now, which is essentially dealing with disinformation, misinformation, social media, where everybody's got an opinion, where bots are rife and helping to shape narratives, and where we're being polarised as a country. But we are starting to see Reform get a little bit tired. I don't know whether people have noticed today on the media round, Nigel Farage is actually starting to get a bit of grilling over that 5 million, and his response is so flippant. That's none of your business, to Nick Robinson, you know, and I think the wheels are starting to fall off a little bit. So we do need to be persistent. But I also understand that you're probably all pretty flipping mad. I did tell Darren that there appears to be a groundswell of support from him from this particular Darren Jones from this particular campaign. I mention it because quite a few messages are popping up now mentioning his name. I don't know what Darren is going to do, but I'll tell you this. Campaign selection or election campaigns within the Labour Party are horrible. They're never nice. They are divisive. I think the time this one has come about is when we're all exhausted because we're heading to summer recess. So there are 2 times in the year where we're just knackered. One is just before Christmas, broken, and one is just before summer. Sky, I did Sky News today, where I said I would back Darren if he put himself forward. I would like to see him on the ballot paper. And if Anti Burnham won and there was a contest, then so be it. You know, I would absolutely back whoever becomes Prime Minister. And they said to me they'd had a pollster on earlier in the day who had said that apparently the general public sort of don't really care when it comes to the summer. They won't really mind a coronation as much. And I made the point that said, I get that, because it's summer and everybody's tired and everybody doesn't want to think about politics. Christmas and summer, they don't want to think about politics. But I do wonder how the history books might judge us if there was a coronation. But if there is only one candidate who puts themselves forward, that is what will happen. And it's not because it's been a stitch up, it's just because no other person wants to put themselves forward. And let me tell you, as well as being quite a toxic process to go through, it is also unrelenting. And I think anyone that is prepared to put themselves forward as the leader who is going to be the Prime Minister, not just a leader in opposition, but genuinely stepping into the shoes of the Prime Minister, is asking a lot of themselves and of their family. I don't know what Darren's ambitions are. The one thing he has been is super loyal, hugely experienced. Brilliant communicator, lovely family man, did a wonderful job with the post office and standing up for those poor people that were on the receiving end of that Fujitsu tech nightmare. Has a huge amount of respect in the public, a huge amount of respect within the membership. But I don't know what his intentions are. I think he would gain a lot of support actually, because he's had that experience in the Treasury, he's had that experience in Number 10. He's a fantastic communicator. So I think if he stood, he would be a fantastic runner to Andy Burnham, and they would have different skill sets to offer, and whoever wins would win. But I don't know whether he's interested, and I don't know whether other people would throw their hat into the ring. So I just sort of wanted to set the scene, really. One is I was just feel as fired up and upset as all of you, I suspect, felt yesterday. And then I felt like I had that fire in my belly just quelled a little bit because the Prime Minister was so gracious, and I thought, blimey, if he can be that gracious, and if his focus is still, I want the Labour Party to be successful, then I owe it to the Labour Party. I feel like everybody else, I have days where I just want to throw the towel in, and I think, this is not what I stand for. But I then have to remind myself that I am always forever telling my constituents that politics is a compromise. You win some, you lose some. You can't please all the people all the time. And sometimes we have to be pragmatic. So the one thing I would say to everybody on this call who is a Labour Party member, please don't go and resign your Labour Party membership. You never know when you might need it. And how we feel in the first few hours and first few weeks, perhaps after any of this change is happening, might be different to how we feel in 3 months or 6 months, when whoever the next PM is starting to benefit from all the great groundwork that Keir laid in place. And they might be brilliant. I know they're going to have the same scrutiny as Keir have. I know that the right-wing media are going to come for them even harder, probably. It's not going to be without its challenges, but it takes a huge amount of bravery, I think, to be a Prime Minister. It's not just about ego. It's about having incredible resilience. So I hope by me saying all that, you don't think, oh, she's a flake and she's given in. I absolutely haven't. But I just do think having perspective is important. Feeling pragmatic is important. And the one thing, like I say, this group most definitely is pragmatic, because I hear you're from a spectrum of parties that you would typically support, and actually all we are is about trying to keep reform out of government, and the value that you all bring to that is so very important. So I do thank you for your support in the past few weeks, and hopefully going forwards. I will take any questions. Jack, I'll let you sort of chair if that's okay, but also if you just want to scream, feel free to do that as well. And if you want to have a gathering, if you want to arrange for me to hold the line meeting in Parliament, then I can hire a room, and maybe, Jack, that's something we could arrange. I could sort a room and people can come to Parliament, and you can have a bit of a nosy around as well, and we can meet in person as well.
I think I've unmuted myself. Well, first of all, my apologies, because I am a complete Teams virgin. I've only ever used the other one, so I don't know my way around the Teams screen. I don't think I have it's difficult. There are lots of questions, but one or two things that I've been saying to colleagues and friends is that this is a tragedy in the traditional, in the classical sense, in that the downfall was written into the existence from the start. I remember standing up in in the branch meeting, we were talking about the election, and there were a lot of young hotheads, firebrands, who wanted a real socialist position. And I had to stand up and say, look, whatever we want now, we want someone who can be elected and who can attract the general British public. He's not there just to stand for the left wing of the Labour Party. And the branch did, in fact, support Keir. I've got nothing against Andy, because I actually voted for Andy for leader in 2015. So I shan't be unhappy to see him, and I think he's probably grown. But the thing that I find most difficult is that Starmer has not been given a fair due right from the start. All the right-wing press are lined up against him. And as far as I'm concerned, it's no point in blaming Andy Burnham for this. I don't think Andy Burnham is responsible for this. I think this whole thing has been engineered. Sorry? I'm sorry, I'm getting a voiceover. But I think the right-wing press has engineered this to, and this is just another part of the whole Brexit and so on syndrome, and it makes me very, very sad. Thank you.
Do you want to do 3 questions and I'll address sort of 3 points at a time?
Hiya, so mine just follows on really from the previous. We know that around about 25,000 people voted for Andy Burnham, and we know that the Hold the Line campaign is running at 23,000. What we don't know is how many people voted tactically to keep reform out of Makerfield. We don't know that, but what we do know is that there's a great swell of support in this area to obviously keep things as stable as possible. And I suppose my question would be, let's just say that nobody wants to run up against Andy Burnham, and it is a coronation. What does that mean in terms of the press? The press are just going to hound in the same way that they have with Keir Starmer. So what are we going to do to make sure that Andy Burnham is ring-fenced so that we don't end up going through the same procedure time after time with whoever comes in next, until everyone crashes out and it really does make way for reform?
Oh, okay. What I'm worried about is I'm afraid of getting too close to America. And I'm worried that with Andy in, he's going to follow down Blair's road of doing whatever America wants. Now, Keir did really well in keeping us out of the Iran conflict, but I have a feeling that Andy will do the bidding of the United States. And that's what's really worrying me. And also, I think he'll draw us further away from Europe. And I don't want that. I want to be closer to Europe. And I want to continue that work that Keir started in making us closer to Europe again. Not that we want to rejoin. That's not in the manifesto. But, we need to be close to Europe. They're our biggest trading partner. They're right next door, 300 million people, and business needs it.
Okay, right. So let me address those 3 points. So firstly, whoever said, can we get Keir to come along if we have a meeting in Parliament? You betcha I will absolutely ask, absolutely, and get your big fat selfie with him. Wonderful. On the whole, Keir having been the right person to win as an election, absolutely he was. And he, he's not been given a fair hearing. You're right. So, Nico, other than just agreeing with you, I'm not quite sure what else I can say on that. When it comes to ring fencing Andy Burnham, we know the media are going to come. We can't change that. This is time immemorial. It's not been. I think possibly one of the strengths that Andy might have, and it does come down to basics. He is a very good communicator. Being balanced, I still don't know what his policies are. I don't know what he's standing for. I don't know what he's going to do. He's apparently going to be having meetings to try and articulate some of that, but more importantly, listen to some of the members of Parliament on what's important. So I hope that will shape the kind of leadership he has. But ultimately, I don't think there is anything we can do to stop the media doing what the media always do. What you might find with him is, because he's quite robust and shoots from the hip in terms of the comms, as far as I've seen anyway, that is a little bit more like Farage does. And Farage seems to be Teflon man, doesn't he? So maybe the fact that Andy has got that skill set will really be actually hugely valuable. Also, the bit on blaming Andy, I do get it, but Andy didn't act alone. You know, you can't decide as a single person in this party, I want to be Prime Minister, without people saying, I think you'd be a great Prime Minister. And then people start rallying around you, and then it happens and it takes a life of its own. So I do get the fury at thinking it's the Andy show and everything's about Andy, but ultimately he would have had, and he did have, a huge amount of support from within the Parliamentary Labour Party and from outside of it, where people were saying, you're a great communicator, you've done a great job in Greater Manchester, wouldn't you be a great Prime Minister? So I kind of hear the fury and thinking he's a target, but he certainly didn't act alone, and he would have had loads of people telling him he would make a great Prime Minister, and that's quite, I imagine, that's quite hard to ignore. With regards to getting closer to America, I would be very surprised if he did that, John, to be honest. We are in totally different times than we were in the 90s and the noughties. If you look at all the polling, Trump is not popular over here, other than with real far right crazies. Trump is not popular. It would, I personally, the view of Samantha, I think it would do Andy Burnham's reputation not good if he aligned himself to the states, to be honest with you. And I think he's much smarter than that. With regards to Europe, I can't even imagine him. I can't imagine him pulling away from the great work that Keir's done there. And again, because he represents quite a diverse and varied, perhaps not Makerfield, but definitely the Greater Manchester morality, was he revelled in how diverse it is and how progressive Manchester is. So I can't imagine Andy Burnham being sort of like small island isolationist. I mean, say these words back to me, and you know, if he becomes the Prime Minister, you can hold this against me, but I can't imagine it. I absolutely can understand the worry, because it's so precious to us that we stay close to Europe. It's so precious to us that we don't get sucked in to America. Even just being pragmatic, I cannot imagine for a second that that's what Andy would do.
Don't you think the temptation is there to steal that from Reform? The temptation is there to attract Reform voters back to Labour or to Labour. The temptation is there to say, oh, look, there's Trump. He was Farage's guy, right?
No, I don't think,
Okay.
John, I honestly don't think that would be enough. If anything, the most important thing we need to do is to get voters back from Greens, where we're hemorrhaging to Reform and we're hemorrhaging to the Greens. What we need to do, view of me, is pull the votes back from the progressive left, and perhaps Andy will help with that. So yeah, I don't know. I think there is too much to lose to risk doing that to try and attract the Reform, but I don't think it'd be enough. Oh, and to the point is, we've learned you can't out reform, right? So I just can't see that happening. So, any more questions, Jack?
Jack's on mute.
Oh, is he frozen?
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah,
Yeah.
can everybody hear me? Yeah, well, mine's not really a question, it's a bit of a rant. I feel that it's like a coup, and we've witnessed it in real time, and that is very upsetting. I've voted Labour all my life, and I have waited 14 years, and suddenly we're acting like Tories. That's what I think. Tory tricks have got Andy Burnham to where he is. The other thing is that he voted in on a manifesto which he naturally will want to change, and that's what the worry is, because it's obvious that somebody who comes in new, they want to put their own stamp on it, and the manifesto that we all liked could be left behind. So then we pushed into a general election, and then there we go. Reform walked through the door, or a Reform and Conservative pact, which is just another nightmare. So that's how I feel. Very, very let down.
Hi everyone. I'm a physics teacher and I'm immigrant. So my question is about the immigration policy. And I think what I have understood in my 4 years of stay in UK, the Green Party or Nigel Farage has hit everyone or the large population with the immigration issue. It started with that in my understanding. And what my understanding is for Labour Party to fall, with all due respect, the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, which is from my country, who's from basically from my country, but I think she had all the right policy. I'm in favor of those stricter policy, but you could not be clear about your policy. At least it's very simple. I think even you ask any sensible person, they can make an easier version of the policy. Do not harass or um, confuse the people who are legally here. When we talk, we should be clear these policies are going to affect illegal people, and legal people must have a clear way. Like if you have to even apply retrospectively something, we should have a clear idea and clear explanation of all the rules. And whenever your enemy or any opposition comes, you have to tackle that. I think the Labour Party failed to tackle reform in this area, and I get surprised by people like Mr. Zia who are immigrants and who speaks like that. Anyone is immigrant, yes, make a new rule, bring more stricter policy. I've been in here in 4 years. I know hundreds of people who were illegal, they get settled, now they're British citizen and they're still taking funds from government. you know it's a shame. I can't complain or put the government needs to make more stricter policies. They need to check every now and then for about the funds, utilizing the funds properly. And even those new policies must be first studied completely, like what we are going to propose, how the people will respond. It's still very unclear after 4 years of stay. Sometime I think I should move to New Zealand. And for, I think if you've heard from anyone or any skilled worker, Miss Shabana was saying the new policy. We are already doing that. We should not have any criminal record. We should pay taxes, everything, and what we are doing. And we're doing nothing wrong. So just clarify for those skilled people. And if you want to waste the time, yeah, I will. Yeah, yeah. So I will close it down, and I just want a clear policy about the immigration, and I just want you to tackle it carefully. The people who have come here with the promise of something, they should be given their due promise, okay? And as I said, the last thing I want to say, we should be calling be fair to everyone. People should not be dealt on religion, on color, on race, on the country. If there is a crime, it's a crime. Who has done it? Why media and why people quote that? The Muslim has done it. The black person has done it. It is against the British. Just call it as a crime. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Just to start, I'd just like to say thank you to yourself and to Samantha for everything that you've done over recent weeks and months. It's been much appreciated. And Samantha, if you see John Slinger as well, will you thank him as well? Because I think he's been fantastic in the press over recent days as well. I think a few points. Starting with the media, I know we can't stop it, but something more has to be done, and particularly about the foreign ownership of our media and the behaviour of organisations such as the BBC, who now, it's all sort of tabloid style reporting. To be honest, I really don't care what Chris Mason thinks personally. I want to hear the reporting of fact and evidence and news. They're a news channel, not an opinion channel. So now I don't even watch the BBC. I'll watch France 24 if I want an objective, evidence-based view of the news. I watch France 24, and that's a really sad state for the country to be in, that you can't trust our national news. I think the other thing that's frustrating with the PLP is, and when I was younger, I actually I was fortunate enough to work under a new Labour government at the Department of Health, and took over the reins from Tory, and we're dealing with the Our Healthier Nation delivery white paper, and looking at things like social inequalities and health inequalities. But it takes time. You have to get the foundations right. You have to get the environment right first before then you start to introduce the change, and you see the benefits flowing through. And there just seems to be a complete naivety in the PLP, in large swathes of those MPs, that they expect a decision to be made and they see it the next week as change, as opposed to laying the foundations, solid foundations on which you build change. And that's why we have 5-year parliamentary terms, not 2 years. And what it says is for the next Prime Minister, do they have to come in with, do they have to win on a sort of populist vote now and say, I'm going to promise to do all this in 2 years, or just do some things that are so superficial that they have to show results in 2 years, as opposed to taking a longer term view in 5 years, in terms of national change and fixing things that have been systemically broken over 14 years. They're not going to happen overnight. So that's been a real frustration. And then the last point, very quickly, I'm from the Northwest, so I've always had a favourable view of Andy. He's always, I'm really annoyed with what's happened, but I think, stepping back pragmatically, if we were in a position where Keir had said, I am stepping aside, then my recommendation is Andy Burnham to go forward. I think, as a person, as a politician, he has got good qualities. He's done a lot in Manchester. He's done a lot. I'm from Liverpool. He did a lot for the Hillsborough campaign as well. But I would also remind Andy, that day at Anfield, he turned up with a generic hopes and prayers speech, and he got bullied by the families. And, if that chant hadn't gone up on the cop, Andy would have run away and just give his generic speech. No, thankfully he didn't, and he reacted to it. But he also has to think on that as well. Sometimes it takes time to understand the issues and move forward. And I think Keir's done a fantastic job. I think Rachel Reeves has done a fantastic job as well, and it's a real shame. So thank you for today, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you.
No worries, and I am mindful that there are loads of you with questions. So Jack, don't hate me, but if we want to do another one of these, and you want to keep asking questions and stuff, then I'm very happy to give up some more time to do this on another day. Right, Simone, I'm sorry. I am sorry. I'm with you. 14 years. And we got in, and it feels like there is a psychodrama happening right now, and it's like watching a car crash happening in slow motion. And and the worst thing is, and I've said this on media, so it's no surprise, we promised at the end of this, we promised to be the grown-up party. And I honestly and truly believe that in Keir Starmer, we definitely had grown-up politics. But with a large majority comes a large number of MPs, and a large number of MPs all thinking that they should. There's a better way to do things, and that has got to be really tough. That's got to be really tough to manage. And well, it proved to be too tough to manage, didn't it? So that I'm worried about. With regards to the manifesto change, again, I don't know, but I would be amazed if we were going to go and rip up the manifesto and do something new. One, because it would be another act of self-sabotage. Two, because the manifesto was good. There was great stuff in there. So I am hearing, the bits that I am hearing from Andy is actually, like, particularly on fiscal stuff, well, we're not going to change that. We just need to find a way to deliver more swiftly, which actually, and I'm just going to jump, I'll come back to you, Hassan. It jumps to Gary's comment about quick results. I think it's a fine line, isn't it? When you are repairing 14 years of austerity and Conservatives chopping and changing leaders, which never helped them, and it certainly didn't help the country, it does take time. But also we need to have some retail offers that do deliver quickly for people. People are superficial, and not just superficial. Most people don't get politics. They're not like you lot that are paying really close attention, but they'll notice something when it lands in their pockets. They'll notice when we make them feel good. And one of my saddest regrets is when we got elected, we didn't change the nation's mood music, and that's on us. We were so cautious. It's like we were carrying a Ming vase, and everything's going to be very hard. stick with it's going to be hard. And actually all we had to say was, it's going to be hard, but we're going to get there. We'll get there together, okay? There'll be some bumps in the road, but we will get there. And we didn't do that as a Labour Party in that first year, and for which I think that was a real missed opportunity, and for which I also apologise. But we are also in a different time. People expect next day Amazon delivery level of stuff. You know, I do my own social media across all platforms. The amount of people that will, and I go in the comments section too, the amount of people who will say, you've not replied to me, I commented 5 minutes ago, and I'm thinking, flipping heck, you know, that's the sort of response rate loads of people are assuming that they should get, and it is not right. We have got much better, much worse at accepting delayed gratification. So, but that is also on us. We need to collectively sort of manage people's expectations. And when the temptation is to be polarised and angry at people, remember to be the sun. I have this mantra, you know, the Aesop's fable where the man and the sun and the wind have a competition to make the guy take his coat off, and the wind's almost certain it's going to win by purely blowing hard, and it's like he knows he's going to force the guy to take his coat off, but all he does is hold it firmer to himself. Meanwhile, the sun gently shines nice and warmly, all positive and lovely, and of his own volition the guy removes his coat. I use that as how I approach things. I think be the sun, have contagious enthusiasm, and eventually people buckle to it because they just can't help it, because that's more attractive than this vitriol and hatred. And I think that's what we need to make sure that we're doing, is remembering to offer the hope. And to the point on immigration, oh goodness me, Hassan, I am so sorry. Have you noticed though that as I mean, we'll all have seen that the immigration numbers have dropped significantly, but that is because of Brexit, right? It's the sort of wrong immigration numbers that have dropped, but it's not. The crossings, the illegal crossings as well, like people being smuggled into the country, I think the last count was year on year, they'd reduced about 34%. And we're sort of a bit quiet about that. It's almost like we're too nervous to mention it. But when you start talking about, look, we're getting the boat numbers down, they pivoted now they're doubling down and getting worse. If you're not a foreign national, if you're not a British national, you shouldn't have a council house, we'll turf you out. So it's almost like there'll never be anything that is enough to satisfy the reform voters and reform. They just want to point a finger at people who are not white British. I think that would be my summation of it, or certainly not born here. So we sort of just have to keep delivering, really. And it was always going to be a case of that. Even as a brand new MP, I hitting 2 years, I really noticed about a year and a half, people were saying to me, oh, you're all right, you are. You've said what you're going to do. Regular coffee mornings, regular surgeries, you're visible. So many people say, God, I've never had an MP that's been as engaging as you. But it's only because I've had time to build up that trust and prove myself. Whichever person comes in as Prime Minister has got to do that on steroids. And that's really hard to do. But when people start to feel it being delivered, they will feel it. So my hairdresser didn't realise that the £7,000 of childcare she gets for her kids so she can go to work is because of government. So we need to almost like collectively help, like you all need to help us get the message out, because the number of people that have said you've got no good policies, and I'm like, oh my God, the thing we're struggling to do is to grab the microphone because reform keep grabbing it. So it's almost like, actually, Jack, what this movement could be like the good news movement, and we could almost be strategic and like get better at digital and be online and challenging people, and if you know, and people's misconceptions, and eventually they go away. Because I've had this firsthand on my own social media, particularly Facebook, in the comments section, because I go in and I address people that are making false claims. I rarely expect to change the mind of the person who's made the comment, because they're rarely acting in good faith. Sometimes they are. It's everybody else that's watching. It's the silent majority. And if we go in and we're angry too, I mean, I am quite forthright, but I'm never unfair. If we go in and we're just as bad as them, it doesn't get us anywhere. But we can be like the sun, right? We can have this contagious enthusiasm. We can keep correcting, because everybody else who isn't commenting is watching what's being said and what we're doing. So perhaps, Jack, we could have a talk about how we could be a pragmatic movement for online challenging of false information. But I hear you, Hassan, on getting a little bit better at giving some comfort to those people who are here legally, that are paying their taxes, who contribute to this wonderfully diverse country that we have got, which is not as diverse as reform would lead you to believe. But I just want to say sorry to everybody. I know I have been embarrassed. I know how disappointing this has been. I know sometimes the PLP just can look a little bit, it can appear and is like it's inward looking. But But even the MPs I'm mad with right now, they still are in it for the right reasons. They still are desperate to keep reform out. They still want to deliver for their constituents. I know you might hate some of their guts because they called for Keir to stand down. I completely understand that, but I can absolutely assure you, not a single one of them wants reform to get in. They're all frightened. They're all frightened of that. So I am mindful we are heading towards football o'clock, and there are lots of hands up. So Jack, Kate, they're not self-serving. I just saw that come up. I know it's mad, it's shocking. I know, but I don't know. Maybe I know lots of them personally that have asked for him to stand down. I'm disappointed, but I know they're not self-serving. But I know I do know that's how it looks. But Jack, very happy if people want to sort of send questions in, and then we can do we could do a pre-record and answer them, or we could do a Q&A sheet, or we could just run another session. Very happy to do this, and we could even set it up as a regular thing, actually, if you want to feel that you've got access to what's happening in Parliament. Very happy to do that. And Jack, let's think about having an event in Parliament, actually, for people that want to come and just feel you're a bit closer to it, that you've not just got an agency, you actually have got a voice. We can get more MPs to it, and we can absolutely ask if Darren would come along and say hello, see as you're all a bunch of fans. He's a nice guy, really nice. John, I tell you what as well, sorry to interrupt, Jack. I did tell John about this yesterday, because he was at number 10 as well. And I said, there's the Hold the Line guys, and I'm doing a course tomorrow night. I said, do you want to join? And then I completely forgot to follow up. So I've absolutely no doubt he would love to come and talk to you all as well. No, that's okay. Jack, just to add, because I have seen comments coming in, because some of you might have joined later and not caught the beginning. I absolutely hear you on the contest versus coronation. I said as much on Sky News today that that's what I would like, but it is predicated on, is that the right word? On somebody wanting to stand. And it is a big ask, and there is a big movement behind Andy. So I just want to say it does rely on another MP actually wanting to do it. So if it doesn't end up, if people don't want to do it, we kind of end up being where we are. But yeah, it won't have been a stitch up. It would just be that nobody else wants to stand. Jack, can I be slightly strange? I saw Sam said she was 10 times more gutted. I'm assuming, well, I don't know whether Sam's a girl or a boy. That's why I go by Samantha. She or he said they're now 10 times more gutted they didn't get to speak. I am happy to stay on a little while longer. I'm not dashing to watch the football, although I do need to do a post on my social media, else my constituents will hate me for not being patriotic. So happy to stay on a little bit longer if Sam wants to say something.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you both for organising this.
Really appreciate it.
No worries. And Jack, I'm seeing questions coming in, like queries about the PLP. Sorry, I don't get it. If you sort of like, if people have got comments and there is anything that's dead obvious that I could address, we could put a Q&A sheet. I can do that, and then you can share it with people on the call.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, thanks, Sam.
Thank you so much. That was
Hi.
great.
I'll be
Thank
really,
you.
really quick, I promise.